there's something going on in our skies. But, you know, life goes on, and you move through school, and you graduate from high school, you graduate from college, you get into a career, you get married, you have kids, and all that is put on the back burner until you get close to retirement. Because then you are seeing down the road that you're going to have all the time you ever wanted to do everything you always wanted to do, whenever you want to do it. And so I started I've always been a hiker and a fisherman, fly fisherman. I always would hike and go into high mountain lakes to do my fishing. And my son at the time, this would have been in about 2012, 13, he started down this avenue that he was going to research and he was going to find Bigfoot. And so he kind of pulled me into that a little bit, and pulled me into the point where right when I retired in 2018, he took me to a place called Bumping Lake, and he said, "You're going to see real tracks." And I was thinking, "Oh, come on." Well, we go up there, and sure enough, you know, we find these tracks. But to me, it could have been anybody out there walking around in the mud, because they let that water down in that lake. But I thought, okay, you know, I'm gonna go with this, because it was a great thing for he and I to be able to do. And we're out in the woods, nobody's around, and so this is our thing. Well, unfortunately, shortly after that trip, he had a heart attack and died in his sleep at age 33. So I lost my partner. But I thought, I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to keep doing this for him. So I continued to go into the woods, and now I started paying a little bit more attention, met some people like Sean right here who you know, I would bounce stuff off of and talk to about, you know, what is this and what could it be? And until then, I really started having some strange things take place. And I thought, this is not, you know, I fought the Bigfoot people that say this is a ape and it's just, you know, held over and whatever. But I knew it was more than that. And I started to really make a shift. And as I said, I had some experiences that were unexplainable. Then a friend of mine sends me an article about a plane crash. And this plane crash, supposedly, and we're going to talk about it later in this presentation, the plane crash, the whole gist of this article was the pilots believed they were hit by something, or they hit something, and it was a mid-air collision. And then from there, you know, the plane eventually crashed and things were sealed down. So that's what really got me into I got to get out of this Bigfoot idea, and I need to start looking beyond. And that's when I looked into Mufon, and I contacted the state director at that time, kind of shared some stuff with her, and she said, "We need people like you investigating for us." And so I joined Mufon, I jumped into the training program, and you know, I guess I feel like I've kind of been on a fast track. I should have never told Walt my plane story, because now here I am. He says, "Jeff, you have to present this." So that's where we are today. This is the cover of a magazine called Skeptical Inquirer for 2014. And their question is Mount Rainier a UFO magnet? Well, the gist of this article was written from the perspective of there's so many lenticular cloud formations seen around Mount Rainier that people mistake for UFOs, and that's why some people would say it's a UFO magnet. Well, today we're going to look at three areas. We're going to explore three different elements that, if it's not a UFO magnet, it's a UFO, or it's a magnet for unexplainable events. And so that's kind of where we're going to go with this. And we're going to start, we're going to start with my look at this is the inside the 30-mile radius of Mount Rainier. Now, why did I pick 30 miles? Because I wanted to make sure I could get my plane crash in that 30-mile radius that I'm investigating. But 30 miles takes in, you know, really a lot of area. Within that 30 miles, there are 19 communities within that radius, with 168 documented UFO sightings. And when I say documented either with New Fork or with Mufon that are directly related to Mount Rainier. Okay, so I'm not saying that somebody from Enumclaw saw a UFO over Auburn. That report from Enumclaw is that UFO is over Mount Rainier. Okay, so that's kind of how I put that together. And we're talking about things from, you know, bright lights that all of a sudden engulf a campground to people driving in their car on, I believe it's 705 outside of Ashford, having something come down, hover, and then take off in front of them. Zigzagging things seen from Cougar Rock Campground. Then there are three, though, that I really want to zoom in on. And these three, and I'll do this in each of my sections. I have a lot to show, and then I pull out like 3 or 4 in specifics. Okay, this is a New Fork sighting report from August of 2022. And this individual was taking a picture from the Henrietta Jackson Center of Little Falls Trailhead, is taking a picture of the mountain. They're tourists, they're up here, they have their camera, and this kid is just clicking off, bing, 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 with his digital camera. Okay, he gets, and now you can see there, you don't see anything in here. But when he gets home and he starts looking through his pictures, all of a sudden, in one picture of that string that he took, he picks up this. Okay? Which some would say is just the same as a blurry picture of Bigfoot in the woods. But I mean, this is not in anything else he had on that particular series. So that takes us to next slide. This is from the Mufon case management system. Again, these are tourists, and this is from the Sunrise area. And these people are driving up, they get out of the parking lot, they're walking to, if you've never been to the Sunrise area, this is just an unbelievable view of the mountain. You get this thing right in front of you, and they pick up this. Didn't notice it until they got home. And then here, you see a little bit clearer. But again, these things are showing up in just one picture of a series that people are taking. Okay. Next one. Some of you may have seen this one. This is a security camera at Paradise. This is looking east. Okay, in fact, I actually had this on my, it was a cover photo on my, or cover for my research page that I had. Right here. Now, this camera in that parking lot, here's a close up. This camera in this parking lot is on a 60-second timer. So it takes that one, and then 60 seconds later, it takes this one. And whatever it was is gone. Now, and I'm not gonna stand here and tell you whether it's a UFO or not, but it sure looks, sure looks good. So outside of the communities, and let's go back here. So again, this gives you an idea of that 30-mile radius. I kind of skipped over this. This kind of shows you all the communities that are on the chart. Okay. If you're wondering what anybody know what that line is? If you're wondering what that line is, that is what's called a ley line. Okay, that's a whole other presentation. But this kind of gives you an idea of what we're taking in here. So let's move from communities to this, missing people. So this is his what he calls his cluster. And the entire cluster is here, but I've put the 30-mile radius on there, and you can see there's a lot of missing people in there. I believe like 19 is the number, but let's just start looking at them. And these ones in blue, I will come back to, but I mean, these start. He goes back to 1946, Bumping Lake, and you can see where this is a guy that vanished searching for a hunter in the Bumping Lake area, never found him. This guy vanishes snowshoeing in Paradise, never found him. Walter Robinson, hunting at Bumping Lake, never returned to the camp, nothing ever found. It just goes on and on and on and on. Longmire, Comet Falls, Paradise, Mowich Lake. The Mowich Lake situation, this was actually a professor from the University of Washington, Sam Duval, who drove to Mowich Lake, parked his car, got out of his car, went right to the Mowich Lake Trail, was going to take the trail that circles around down into the Ipsit Creek campground area, and then back around and up. Okay, they found his water bottle, identified that they found a water bottle that was identified to be his on the trail. Again, neither Sam nor any of his belongings were ever found. Okay, but let's zero in on 4 of them, because these are really interesting. Marcella Rominsky. Marcella is 4 years old, July 1st, 1950, and at that time, her mom, they lived in, her parents, they lived in a little town called Fairfax. Fairfax was up in the very top of the Carbon Canyon. It was a mining town, and in 1950, there were still people there. Today, there's just foundations, because when the mining left, the people left. But Marcella and her mom hike out the Carbon River Trail to go to a place called Chanis Falls, okay? They get to Chanis Falls, and mom decides they're gonna have a picnic there. Mom decides, before we have our picnic, I'm gonna take a picture. So, if you can imagine, mom wades out so she can get close enough, so this picture turns out okay for her. 15 feet behind her, she says, is her daughter, Marcella. She takes the picture, turns around, and the kid's gone. Just like that. Well, of course, they bring in some searchers, people are looking, can't find this little 4-year-old. 9 o'clock the next morning, so now this is in July, so the night temperatures are gonna get cool, but they're not gonna get super cold. Well, 9 o'clock the next morning, 2 hikers find her 2 miles up above the falls on a ledge higher up on Mount Rainier. Now, when they find her, her dress is on backwards, her shoes are on the wrong feet, and her laces are just everywhere. So the question is, how did she get there?
Was she dead?
No. No,
Did she say
was,
anything?
pardon me?
Did she say anything as a
No.
little kid?
Has no idea how she got there. Yeah. The next one is a guy named Eric Lewis, and typically, Eric Lewis is a professional climber, and typically, part of David's research does not, especially on mountains, does not involve climbers, because climbers go missing pretty often. But because of this guy's climbing experience, where he had been to Nepal, he'd climbed Mount Everest, he'd climbed in Chile, he'd climbed in Argentina, he actually summited Mount Rainier at least 10 times, okay? Well, he's climbing with 2 experienced mountaineers, Dawn Storm and Trevor Lane, and they are taking the route up Gibraltar Ledge. This kind of shows you, this is not Eric, but this shows you Gibraltar Ledge, and this shows you the path up to 14,000 feet, okay? Dawn's leading the team, he gets to 14,000 feet, they're on there using a line, we click on, Trevor gets to 14,000 feet, Eric hooks on to the line, weather is starting to make a turn, but Dawn at the time can see Eric, in between, blowing snow, and then all of a sudden, the rope goes limp, and they pull it up, and there's no Eric. And there's no explanation why a person with that kind of experience would unhook themselves from that line. Never found, gone, just gone.
Was his carabiner unhooked?
Unhooked, yes.
So someone would have had to mechanically do that.
Either he did for whatever reason, or something or someone, right, you're exactly right. Okay, this next one is, this one's really interesting, because this is about a lady named Karen Sykes. And if you are a follower of the Seattle Mountaineers, you'd know the name Karen Sykes. Karen Sykes, 70 years old, avid runner, hiker. She wrote some safety manuals for Mount Rainier National Park. She's written hiking books for the Mountaineers. People would say that Karen knew the mountain like you and I know our backyards. I mean, she was that familiar with every avenue to go up that mountain. Well, Karen and a friend are gonna hike out of Sunrise the Owie Lake Trail. And this is in June of 18, so it's kind of early, all right? So they hike up, and at about 4,500 feet, they hit snow. And they're not prepared for snow, I should add. Her friend decides, this is good enough for me. Karen tells the friend, I'm gonna go ahead and go up a little bit further, and then I'll be back. And it shouldn't take me more than an hour, because she wanted to actually see the condition of the lake. And this would be the lakes that are 5,200 feet. So she's going up 700 feet in the snow, okay? And if you can imagine, it started out like so, and then the further up she's going, the deeper and slushier and sloppier it's getting, okay? Well, she never returned, all right? So her friend gets a hold of the Park Service, they bring out the searchers. They had, 100 searchers and multiple canine teams looking for her. No luck. 3 days later, 3 days later, three hikers. 3 days later, three hikers, too many threes in there, find her in a place called Boundary Creek, which is on the other side of this ridge. This is Governor's Ridge, okay? And Governor's Ridge is at 6,500 feet. So Karen supposedly went up all the way, for some reason, all the way up and over Governor's Ridge, found her body down in a ravine, dead. For someone with the kind of knowledge that she has or had of the mountain, that one's pretty unexplainable as to why she would even do that. Because getting up and over this ridge, she would have been in at least 3 to 4 feet of snow at that time. So, another just unexplainable thing. How did she get there? What happened? They didn't find her. The last one, though, this one's really kind of interesting. It's kind of a little bit eerie to a point as to how this all connected. We had just finished the flyer for this presentation, and we had posted it out to different places. I put it on this group that I have, and all of a sudden I get contacted by this young lady who lives in Wilkeson. And she says to me, she says, is Chet Hansen gonna be part of your presentation? Because she asked me what my presentation was about inside the 30, and I told her one part of it was missing people. And she said, is Chet Hansen gonna be part of your presentation? And I said, you know, it's the weirdest thing you're asking me this question right now, because a couple days prior to that phone call, I had watched a video presentation. So I told her, I said, I just found out about it. She says, I'm Chet's parents' next door neighbor. And so she, through this society that she has presenters do, she was having this presentation on mines in Wilkeson. And she goes, you need to come up, I'll introduce you to his dad. So I go up and I get to meet Chet's dad. And now this happened, Chet went missing in 1997. So this is 27 years ago. And that man, because he's had no closure, that man is grieving still to this day. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna share with him my experience with my son, thinking that, you know, this might put him a little bit at ease and feel a little more comfortable to talk to me. And as soon as I mentioned it, you could see tears welling up in his eyes, because I told him, I said, this never goes away. And so anyway, we had a nice little conversation. He's invited me to come back to the home. And like I told him, I think the Chet Hansen case could be a presentation on its own. But in his particular case, Chet left home to go to a place called Shriner's Peak, which is kind of around the other side from Wilkeson. He's got to go Highway 410 around to the other side to be able to take some pictures. And at Shriner's Peak, he runs into two hikers, and he's walking around with his light meter trying to figure out if he wants to take pictures from there. The hikers talk to him, you know, he does his thing. Next thing, he says goodbye, and he's walking back down the trail to go to his car. Two hikers get done doing whatever, you know, they're doing. They walk down the trail. There's Chet's car, no Chet. That was the last time anybody saw him. No camera, no backpack, nothing. Completely disappeared. So that's kind of the missing people part of this. And it's just, you know, we have UFOs that are being seen and photographed. We have missing people that are just absolutely just vanishing. Now let's talk about some plane crashes. This is what really kind of got me questioning even more what is going on out there. Again, here's my radius, and these are all plane crash sites. Okay, the one we're gonna zero in on is right here. Okay, but first, let's just take a look at kind of a listing of these. From 1944, this is 44 to 83, unknown, could be weather related. Cause of fire, unknown, plane radio for landing on McCord Air Force Base, that was the last contact. This one we're gonna talk about. Supply drop, they found it 400 feet below the summit. So many of these, there's no explanation for why the planes go down. And these blues over here, kind of indicate that we're not talking blowing snowstorms or anything. We're talking pretty good weather for those to happen. Again, no radio communication or radar track. No evidence of pre-existing mechanical malfunctions. This is one that I want you to remember. No evidence of pre-existing mechanical malfunction or failure. Plane pushed down. Okay, that's an important one that we're going to come back to. So the one that got my attention is this one. April 1st, 1959. This is a C-118 Liftmaster Douglas DC-6. This thing left McCord Air Force Base at about, well, let's just go through the timeline. Here's our timeline. Left about 6:30, an hour and 15 minutes into the flight. We hit something or something hit us. Ironically, the exact location at this time is unknown. Mayday, headed back to the base. Exact time and location, unknown. This is it. Plane crash at 8:19. Observers at the crash site, it was as if it was pushed down in a horizontal position. It was shredded beyond belief. This is what was reported in the PR.
Are most of these crashes where the pilots are found or not found?
Well, we found all of these guys.
So mostly this is not missing people, this is just.
No, we're just strictly going to plane crashes. Thanks for clarifying. So in the newspaper, the initial military media response from Colonel Booth was a radio report from the plane indicated there had been a mid-air collision. It would appear there was some kind of mid-air collision prior to the crash. So that's the media, that's what the military is telling the media when they're asking. However, what's really a little different is the military's first report was that the C-118 was struck by an unknown object near Mount Rainier, damaging the rear horizontal stabilizer, knocking a large part of it off the plane. Okay, and witnesses see that plane and it's fighting to maintain altitude. For some reason, the plane did not land at McCord. It turned and went north, striking trees on Crocker Heights or Sparpole Hill, if you're familiar with that area. Eventually crashed at 8:19. Okay, what was reported now, April 3rd? Right now, we really don't know, may not ever know, investigating all possibilities. An engine could have exploded. If either occurred, it could have made the pilot think there was a mid-air collision. No other aircrafts reported in the area. And this is a good one right here. The plane could have collided with a flock of geese or been hit by falling meteor. April 4th. Now the plane may have hit trees on the south hill southeast of Oregon. This may account for the pilot's radio message that the plane had hit something or had been hit by something. Possibility of a mid-air collision or not. Pilot's statement that he hit something may have reference to the high ground timber. This is now Times reporting. Possibility still that there could be a mechanical malfunction. News Tribune. A helicopter is searching the path reported. No concrete evidence to back up speculation of a collision. Unlikely the plane struck a tree or any other ground object. The flock of birds is the kind of a problematic possibility. Still investigating an internal explosion. Officials have not completely ruled out the mid-air collision. But in the absence of the collision clues, investigators continue to believe the pilot's report of mid-air collision to be correct, and the investigation will continue along those lines. So still, they're kind of thinking this thing was hit by something. April 3rd. Experts from Norton Air Force Base are flying up to McCord to investigate this thing. April 4th, took them 1 day to figure out that the collision is ruled out. Cause has been determined at high ground and trees southeast of Orient, in addition to that mechanical malfunction, has been determined to be the cause of the crash. And you're going to see this is true. I'm not saying it's not true. But let's see what witnesses said. This guy's in downtown Oregon, described to the police and chief of police, 3 parachutes in the air trailing. Driving home, I saw what looked like a flare in the sky, saw a terrific flash. Okay. It appeared one engine was on fire, the entire plane burst into flames, observed a brilliant glow, northerly direction, followed by a second glow. Vern Freeze, Norton Air Force Base. No indication of any UFO activity of any kind from any witnesses. The only really unusual evidence was the conflicting statements of the Air Force and the published reports. If you remember their first report, it was something hit by Mount Rainier. That never comes up again. Gladys, who is an independent UFO investigator, and I still have not been able to determine if Gladys was part of the Bob Gribble group called Aerial Phenomena Research Group. I don't know if she was part of that group or not, but she took it upon herself to go see Robert Killian, who's in the McCord Air Force Base, or McCord National Guard, at his house, and asked if he could comment on being silenced about this whole thing. And his response was, let's put it this way, my company doesn't want me to talk about it no more. So now, let's look at these are actual people I talked to, still living. Leland and May were young kids working in Leland's parents' greenhouse, and you can see their description. They watched the plane lumber across the sky above Prairie Ridge. It was trailing flames for what I remember for a couple hundred feet. And when we get to the map, I'll show you where all these people made these observations. May says about the same thing. But this one's huge. A guy named Randy gets a hold of me. And because I had put out to my group, I basically put out a question. Anybody remember this? Do you know anybody that was there? Anything ring a bell? Randy calls me, and Randy's probably like 70-ish, probably a little older. He says, I was hunting with my cousins that lived in South Prairie in the late 60s and early 70s in the hills above the South Prairie Valley. And you'll see this on my Google Earth shot. We saw something flashing in a tree that appeared to be a big piece of aluminum. It was as if it fell from the sky and ended up tangled in the branches. Jacob says his grandfather talked about this to him, talks about the Sparpole Hill incident. Again, Scott, same thing. He's on a place called Patterson Road. I'll show you where that is. Watched it burning across the sky. This one's a little different though. Laura remembers her mom telling her that the mother of one of the victims had actually come to town knocking on people's doors, trying to get information about what had happened because the military had not told her much at all. Okay, so here's the views. So this is the crash site. There's your aluminum panel found by Randy. This is Leland and May at the greenhouse. That's Jacob. This is Scott. Scott's on Patterson Road. Here's Sparpole Hill. Okay. And I'll show you the path of the plane, but I just wanted you to see what their views were as they're looking at this thing, because it crashes up here. So if it's coming in this direction, they all have a pretty good shot at it. Okay, the Aerial Phenomena Research Group, that is the Bob Gribble group, okay? And they saw and heard about this plane crash, and they actually, their first report was exactly as reported by the Seattle PI. However, they weren't really satisfied at that point, so they went ahead and did their own report on top of that and found that aerial explosions in Seattle at 7 o'clock that night, 7:20, another explosion. The exact time isn't known for this, but during the early hours of darkness, mysterious lighted objects were seen in the sky above Kent, north of the crash site, and Carbonado, which is really within this path. Sightings of mysterious objects in the Orion area confirmed in a telephone conversation with Orion's police chief and the public information officer of McCord. The public information officer of McCord said that were flares being dropped by parachute as part of a parachute jump exercise. Okay, and remember, this is Bill, we already talked about him, he saw this, but Mr. Delwood, who's the news chief at Fort Lewis, denied that any kind of parachute exercises were going on. After the crash, more explosions in Seattle, and the next morning, following the crash, Gribble's headquarters in Seattle received an anonymous phone call stating that the radar in McCord had picked up UFOs prior to the crash. And he neither denied nor admitted. So Saturday, the 4th, Gribble and his investigators go to Orting to meet with the chief. The chief said he would be more than happy to meet with them, but it had to be in person. When they get to Orting, the investigators find that the chief's at a conference with an Air Force colonel. The town was alive with Air Force people at that time. After waiting 15 minutes, the chief told investigators he had nothing to say. Any statements would be provided by McCord Air Force Base. The police chief and the Orting officials had been silenced. This statement was given to investigators by a source close to the chief. Residents had been advised not to discuss the crash with anyone. They were scared. The investigators were advised to mind their own business and basically leave town. So now we're into damage control. The Air Force is working frantically to control the area. Residents have been silenced. Air tower operators at Fun Field, which is just on the hill above Oregon, going west, going towards McCord, Fun Field, and as far south as Auburn, were asked to sign affidavits which would compel them not to discuss that flight. What were they trying to hide? And did the Air Force radar actually see a UFO hit that C-118? So here's the conflicting information. Remember, it was struck by an unknown object near Mount Rainier. Mr. and Mrs. Jones said they saw the parachute objects, but there was no training of any kind going on during that time of the crash. The investigators investigating the crash scene determined the plane slammed into the ground in a horizontal position, as though it had been thrust to the ground by an unseen force, shredded beyond belief. So most of the time, these things are gonna, I would think, come down like so, not just kind of fall. The military accident report, no evidence. Upon examination of engines and components, number 4, firewall shutoff valve was closed. Fire seal door had not melted. A thorough investigation of the engines and accessory records didn't show any deficiencies. Engine and structure specialists found no evidence. Flap sections were at 20 degrees, and 20 degrees, I believe, Dan, means it's still trying to climb or stay up. All right?
No,
What is 20 degrees?
flaps are used in a landing approach, not a climb out.
So are they on the wings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Main landing gear did show evidence of being retracted. All doors and hatches indicated that they were secured prior to impact. Parachutes were there. But the question is, and this is all in this report right here, this basically says what I just had on the screen. The question is, what was this? What had been redacted? So, military conclusion was no evidence, no UFOs, plane was flying too low, it was dark, not many houses to light up the area, the plane struck Sparkle Hill, and the official cause was to be determined in pilot error. Now, let's just take a look here. Here's the path. So, this is the path of the plane. Okay? McCord's out here, so it comes along this path, comes all the way out here. This is Carbonado, South Prairie, Oregon. Comes along here, makes a turn. Now, I'm not really sure why it would have made this turn. It makes this turn, hits Sparkle Hill right here, and then at some point is when it was determined that it turned back, continued straight on until it crashed. All right? And if we look at it on Google Earth, so it would have come above, up here, would have come out, made the circle, Carbonado's out here, made the circle, came down, and there's nothing that says that it didn't hit Sparkle Hill. So it came down, hit this right here, and this is when I think things kind of blew up, continued straight, or continued in this direction, and then crashed at eventually. But the position of that hunter's panel, and who knows, those guys could have been making that up or just saying it, but the position of that hunter's panel is what really kind of makes you wonder. So the question is, was it hit by a UFO or not? That's it.
Is that the wrap?
That's it. That's the politest information. If you're interested in any of that, I told David if I was going to use his book for this thing, that I would give him a little plug. This is a personal plug of my own. If you go into the woods to hike or whatever, first of all, I'd say don't go by yourself. And lastly, if you have to go by yourself, make sure you carry something like this, which is a personal locator beacon. So if you get in trouble, all you have to do is push that SOS button and somebody can hopefully find you. Okay, thank you.